Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Pinstripe Prospects Podcast, episode 22 of season number 2. A lot of twos in there. Happy to be back with you this week as we're actually going to get to talk some Yankees baseball. Summer camps, spring training camp 2.0, whatever you want to call it, it's underway. There's been intra-squad games on so at least somewhat games are back. So we're going to get into everything that's gone on at Yankee summer camp so far. We're going to look at the schedule that's come out, and let's just say the Yankees, they must know some people in the league office because they got some really good breaks on that schedule. But we'll get into that. We'll talk about takeaways from the intra-squad, what happened with Masahiro Tanaka over the weekend. But then we have a special second part of the show. We're going to do a minor league roundtable, talk about what we did a little bit last week with the cancellation of the season, and just talk about minor league baseball in general, how we all got into it, what our favorite fan experiences are, our beat writer experiences. Some of us have covered minor league teams here for the website. We'll get into that, what we liked about it, what we do like about it currently, and what do we miss the most about minor league baseball. We have some special guests. We have a lot of people on the show today. You're going to hear a lot of voices, and we're going to try to get through as many topics as we can over the next hour or so. Want to remind you can follow us on Twitter at Pinstripe Pros. Like us on Facebook, Pinstripe Prospects. Follow us on Instagram. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast on iTunes. Please give a rating. We hope it's 5 stars. We want to hear from you. What topics you like, what guests you want us to have on, what do you want us to talk about. We're happy to hear from you. So you can subscribe to wherever else you get your podcast. Chances are we have it. You can email me as well, rickjkeeler@gmail.com. We got so much to get into, so let's get into all of our guests. We'll introduce them one at a time. My partner in crime is back, of course, this week, James O'Connell. James, how you doing?
Doing pretty good, Ricky. 16 days till things really start to matter. What are we, 5 days into summer camp? Is that what we're calling it? And no injuries to this point yet. Knock on wood, with the exception of Tanaka, but I think we dodged a bullet there. So all in all, pretty good.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think if you look at this way, if you're a week away from exhibition games, like when they actually play other teams, that's when you can kind of get into your excitement level, where you're at. So definitely getting close to that. One of our social media people is back, and she's doing a great job running it. Alexis Farinacci's here. Alexis, how are you?
Doing well. I mean, can't complain. Yankees baseball is back. Might look different, but I think we can speak for most Yankee fans in saying it's exciting to see some real live baseball happening through these intra-squad games. Seeing what the guys have, what they're capable of, seeing our pitchers versus our hitters. No, unfortunate to see what happened to Tanaka, but good to see the rest of the guys healthy, and hopeful that Tanaka's going to bounce back here pretty quickly. As we get ready to kick off, the exhibition schedule came out. We're going to head to the Mets and a couple other teams. We'll get into that later, but yeah, doing well.
Our founder, Rob Pimpsner, is here. Rob, how are you?
I'm doing well as can be. How are you doing?
I am doing pretty good. Can't complain right now. We got also other guests on the show. One of our writers here at Pinstripe Prospects is here, Matt Jarrell. Matt, how are you?
Doing great, Ricky. Thanks for having me on. It's a pleasure as always. I'll tell you, I never thought that I could enjoy watching glorified baseball practice on television this much, but the last couple of days I have been locked in on these intra-squad scrimmages and really just soaking up and enjoying every minute of it. Looks weird, Yankee Stadium empty without fans, save for Brian Cashman and CC Sabathia sitting behind home plate, but it's just such a joy to have baseball back. It's great to see the guys on the field. They look like they're having a great time. So I have really been living it up the last couple of days, that's for sure.
We'll get into the takeaways from the intra-squads, the two of them in a little bit, so Matt will be a big voice in that. And a special guest on the show, maybe a familiar voice if you're with us for season 1 of the podcast. He's back. He was our host then. I was happy to learn from him, and now he's at MiLB.com. Rob Terranova's here. Rob, how are you?
Doing great, Ricky. Thanks for having me back. It's good to be back, and excited to talk Yankees baseball in the minors.
Absolutely. We're going to definitely look forward to our minor league segment coming up in the second part of the show. But let's get into Yankee summer camp. So much has gone on. The Yankees did have a couple of COVID-19 positive cases in DJ LeMahieu and Luis Cessa. Cessa symptomatic, LeMahieu asymptomatic. So keep that in mind as more news comes out in the next couple of weeks in the first round of testing. So let's look at the intra-squad scrimmages first. Matt, Jarrell, you mentioned that you've been all over the intra-squads. What have you taken away from it? What has stood out to you?
Absolutely. I think the first and most obvious point, probably the one that's on everybody's mind, is how terrific Clark Schmidt looked yesterday. I mean, I know that there's been a long layoff and the hitters, the Yankees' big bats are probably not as game ready as they might have been if we had had a full spring training back in March. But man, I mean, Clark Schmidt took the mound last night. He looked cool, he looked collected, and he was setting down some of the best hitters that the Yankees have to offer. I mean, he threw a couple of curveballs that had Gleyber Torres' knees breaking. He threw a couple of nice sinkers to Giancarlo Stanton in a few of those at bats. He really just looked like a top caliber pitcher. He's making the Yankees scouting staff look like geniuses for selecting him in the first round of the 2017 draft when it was clear that he was going to have to go under the knife for Tommy John. It's 3 years later. He's fully recovered, and I think he's going to be a real spark for this team and possibly even participate and contribute to the team in this unconventional season. He was outstanding. It was a pleasure to watch.
I think Schmidt definitely stood out just because I think when you look at, he was facing the A squad out of the two. So being that you're facing the Judges, the Torreses, those top guys, you want him to make a good impression. He made one in spring training, and he's been making it at least in the intra-squad portion. Alexis, I know you watched one of the games. What did you take away?
Yeah, I watched yesterday's as well. And I think just the same, how well Clark Schmidt did on the mound. He was just absolutely outstanding. And in his post-game press conference, he really talked about how he just took it all in, how for him, that wasn't an inter-squad game. For him, that was a game that he had to go out and he had to win. He talked about how if there was going to be a time that he needed to impress the coaching staff and really show that he was capable of pitching at that level, that it was going to be last night. To quote him, he said, being able to face the starting lineup for the Yankees at Yankee Stadium, I was so excited. This is awesome. If I want to open a door or somebody's eyes, tonight's the night to do it. And I think you really saw that out of Clark Schmidt last night. Everybody's talked about his confidence on the mound. Even Aaron Boone saying how much he loved to see that confidence that he had on the mound. So, yeah, I think we see how well Clark Schmidt did. Tonight you have Miguel Andujar taking a bomb off of Garrett Cole. He showed that he was ready. So, yeah, we've had some exciting baseball already.
And we know Garrett Cole is angry about intra-squad games. The fact that Garrett Cole gets game intensity over intra-squad just shows you why the Yankees gave him that much money. Like the fact that he cares when he gives up a home run in intra-squad and treats simulated games or spring training games like Game 7 of the World Series with the adrenaline boost. It tells you the guy, I think, really cares, which I guess that you should, but for that amount of money, that's always a good sign to see it. He just says the right thing all the time. I mean, you'll never hear Garrett Cole say the wrong thing. It feels like the comments are on point. James, I know for you had the big rant a couple weeks ago, like you wanted to see Aaron Judge on the field. Well, we've seen Aaron Judge on the field, and the fact that he's saying, I'm game ready, I mean, we want to see him in an opening day game first, but for now, it's a good sign that Judge is taking swings and feeling good.
Yeah, it's not so much where I was worried that he wouldn't be on the field. I just was frustrated at the choice of words that I was hearing, that it was they were optimistic that Aaron Judge was going to be on the field. Well, I mean, he had months and months to heal from this fractured rib, so at that point you would hope he'd be on the field. And yeah, he looked good today. He had two balls I thought for sure were out. I believe one was off Ben Heller. I forgot the other, but I thought he had two home runs for sure today. So he looked great at the plate. Hit a couple balls hard yesterday. So all in all, you got to be happy with what you've seen from Aaron Judge. The biggest thing is that he's on the field, appears to be healthy, and appears to be really ready to go. He threw some quotes out there that were very captain-like of him, and I know a couple of people on Twitter were enjoying that. So all in all, pretty good start for Aaron Judge, just the fact that he's on the field.
Of course, the big news story from this past weekend is what happened with Giancarlo Stanton hitting a line drive off of that went off Masahiro Tanaka's head. He's feeling good. Luckily, no symptoms from the concussion that he had, so that's a good sign. Big sign of relief, and I think, Rob Pimsner, what we saw is fans are still angry at Giancarlo Stanton, which is crazy. You've seen Aaron Judge and Gleyber Torres say, why would Yes show that so many times? I'm not sure if they knew that the practices were being televised. I'm not sure if anybody told them. It was just a weird situation all the way around, but it made the Yankee pitchers use the L screen, which was a good sign.
Yeah, I mean, during practices and sim games and stuff, it makes sense to use it. There is no reason for fans to be really angry at Stanton. It happens. It's baseball. It can happen in these sim games too. You never know. It is baseball. Shit happens. There's no reason to be mad at Stanton, but I agree to the players to an extent. Media has a job to do. You get the information out there. The problem is it's like social media where you get all these people that are not just retweeting the video, but they're sharing, they're downloading and reposting the video on their own tweets. So when you go on social media, you got the same video, one right after the other, right after the other, right after the other, right after the other. That's where it gets too much. I think that's one of the problems we're facing with social media when it comes to amplification of something that shouldn't be amplified.
A couple of updates from Brendan Cuddy from NJ.com. Aaron Boone said about an hour ago before we recorded this, Kyle Higashioka's got a sore neck, and Clint Frazier's been dealing with a foot issue last couple of months, but is able to do everything. Yankees just slow playing him. So those are updates on two Yankees that could play big roles this season. Should there be a season? Again, right now there is a season, but with all the tests and the testing things, which I find weird, Rob, with MLB. Apparently, I think they didn't realize that on a holiday weekend, we're not sure if FedEx can deliver all the tests. It's still crazy that we had teams have to cancel workouts because we can't get the first round of testing done in a timely fashion, which is making players second guess whether they want to play or not.
What it comes down to is Major League Baseball completely underestimated the amount of time and the amount of and the facilities needed for this testing that they want to do. I think having just one test site was a horrible miscalculation by Major League Baseball. You need at least 2 or 3 or 4, at least one on each coast, maybe one in the middle of the country, to really do this in a timely fashion. I mean, what we're seeing is Major League Baseball just doesn't know what the fuck they're doing.
Yeah, definitely. I think baseball's got a lot of questions they have to iron out it doesn't help that Rob Manfred gets mad if you say anything that criticizes the process. Apparently, like Craig Calcaterra tweeted, he wasn't happy with what Mike Rizzo said, but Mike Rizzo's telling facts. I mean, it's good to see him that he's upset that his players are going through what they're going through. So we'll keep an eye on that throughout the next as more tests come in, more players decide to opt out. Nick Markakis, I know, did from the Braves, David Price from the Dodgers, so many different players opting out are still trying to decide. I mean, just go check out Chris Bryant's comments. They were not. If you wonder if Chris Bryant might play, it's interesting, and it could determine the fate of the season if there is a season. So we're just going to act like there is a season, but don't be surprised if there is not. So let's keep that in mind as we now talk about the schedule. 60 games. Schedule was released on Monday. MLB Network had a big schedule show. I get it. You got to have a show. I don't know if we needed a show, but we had one. And Rob Terranova, I want to get you in on this too. It just seems like, as I said at the top of the show, if you're a Yankees fan, you have to be pleasantly thrilled that you got every single break in the schedule that you could possibly want.
That is absolutely true. I did like the little quip you did up top about knowing someone in the office that made these schedules, because you said it. Really minimized the traveling. All the big games they got at home. Yeah, everything basically broke the Yankees' way for the schedule, which is going to help in the long term. I did see that someone basically did the equivalence of what something in a 162-game season would equate to in a 60-game season. And they figured out that a 6-game losing streak is equivalent to a 17-game losing streak over the course of a full season. So every game matters. Everything counts. And you know what? The Yankees have no excuse in terms of scheduling or travel or anything, because it's all in their favor.
And also, I think, James, when you look at it, you look at their early portion of the schedule. I mean, you're getting Scherzer, Strasburg, and Corbin early in the year. They're not stretched out. You're getting Aaron Nola potentially for the Phillies, depending on what happens with him. You're getting him early in the year where he might not be able to go the full length. You get the Rays that second week. Most of the time, your Rays matchups are July. Atlanta's a little bit early, and you only get 2 games with the Braves, so it's like mini series in between. So the Yankees, with the exception maybe the elite Met pitchers, are going to get a lot of these elite arms in the National League very early when they're not at full 7-8 innings strength, and I think that's going to benefit them as they clearly, I think when you look at the NL East bullpens, the Yankees have the edge there.
Well, for sure. There's no doubt that the first half of the schedule is significantly more difficult than the second half, and that's not to say that the first half is that difficult. Just the second half is an absolute joke. I mean, we go from we start off with the Braves here, then it's Mets, Rays, Orioles, Blue Jays, Red Sox, Blue Jays, Marlins. Those are like almost, I won't want to say gimmies, but like those are like the Blue Jays are going to be tough, but the Orioles and Marlins, man, that's some, and the Red Sox even for that matter. That's some second half to schedule up some wins, and not for nothing, there's no excuse for this team to not put together some type of run, especially against those teams. Early on, like you said, Nationals, Phillies. Sure, that's going to be tough. Then you got some Braves mixed in there. But when you get the Orioles, Jays, and Red Sox, and Marlins as often as you are, you should be grateful for that. And the Yankees have, again, no excuse to not come out with a very strong record at the end of this.
Yeah, with all the breaks the Yankees got, with you have all of your division matchups being 7-3 or 6-4 home away, and you get 7 Red Sox home games, which if I'm a Red Sox fan, I'm ticked off that it was 7 out of 10.
I think most in Boston are acknowledging this is somewhat of a punt season. Chris Sale out with Tommy John. Eduardo Rodriguez is really your only big league arm you got in that rotation. So I think in maybe any other year where you do have Mookie Betts and Chris Sale and David Price on that roster and you're really fighting for a World Series, I'm sure they'd be pissed. But, I mean, it is what it is kind of. They're all looking forward to 2021 free agency with Mookie Betts.
But it is 60 games, and that could be the difference between getting a wild card spot and not getting a wild card spot.
Right, but I think most acknowledge that this is not a legitimate baseball team. So I imagine maybe some are a little ticked off, but this is not a legitimate major league team. It's a very poor roster they have right there.
If you like Yankee Red Sox Sunday night baseball games, you get 2 of them in August. So prepare your alarm clocks accordingly for the next day on that one, because you'll get a few 5-hour games. Alexis, I want to get to what you said before we went on the air. We're going to have to prepare for Yankee fans being not happy that they didn't go 21-2 during this 23-game September stretch of ball games. But we're going to have to try to talk them off that, because, I mean, you look at the young talent in baseball, and the Blue Jays have a lot of it. That's a team that I think in September is going to be that spoiler team. Keep an eye on Nate Pearson. Those Blue Jays September games, playing them 10 times, could be pretty tricky with the amount of talent they have.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. The Blue Jays are going to be a team to watch. But at the same token, I still think if the Yankees can stay healthy for 60 days, you look at the strength of this roster this year, and there's no excuse to not win out. And to not take this season. I think it's the Yankees season to win.
Yeah, like James was saying, there's really no excuses for why the Yankees should not win this division, barring a huge amount of injuries. But even then, they have the depth to get through it. And I think, Matt, looking at it from the Yankees side of things, if they even had a rash of injuries, they're not getting that excuse from fans because of the 60-man player pool that they have, and the fact that a lot of them got experience last season.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. And I think, in a lot of ways, the shortened nature of this season almost benefits the Yankees from an injury standpoint, because if we had gotten started back in March, the Yankees would have been fairly shorthanded to begin the season. Now that, players like Judge, Paxton, Stanton have had time to rehab and come back, they're going to be starting out full strength. So there's no excuses anymore. 2 other things I want to add on the schedule. Number one, just returning to this issue of the Red Sox and Yankees and the perceived imbalance in scheduling. This is now the 2nd straight year where I think that Red Sox fans could have a legitimate grievance with how things have shaken out. The Yankees didn't make their first trip to Fenway last season until I believe it was the middle of July because of the London series and other things. So the Red Sox were defending their World Series championship against their major divisional rival, not hosting them till July. So I know some Red Sox fans that are fairly miffed about that, and now with this, it's kind of like another adding insult to injury with this schedule this year. And then one other thing is the Yankees will be hosting the Phillies during the first homestand of the season. So we are going to be welcoming Joe Girardi and Didi Gregorius back to the Bronx. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, on that front, or actually no, that first series is a. Oh no, it is. Yep, it's a home and home. So those two, luminaries of recent Yankee teams will be returning to the Bronx. It'll be a little bit anticlimactic, as we'll be welcoming them back with no fans in attendance, but nonetheless should be interesting. I'm sure that those two guys will be glad to come back and play in the Bronx again. So it'll be cool to see how that shakes out.
And a midweek home opener, not in the afternoon. I think that's another thing will make baseball feel different. In addition to no fans, when you don't have that 1 o'clock home opener kind of thing, which I know the Mets, I think, had a 4 o'clock home opener on July 24th, so it's a little bit different. I have one beef with the schedule from a national perspective. I think MLB really dropped the ball not having Astros-Dodgers open the season in Dodger Stadium following Yankees-Nationals. They missed a big opportunity to have two huge matchups back-to-back, because while Giants-Dodgers is a good rivalry, do we really need it twice on ESPN in the first 4 days of the season? I think it's on ESPN Fox Saturday with their triple-header, and then ESPN again in a doubleheader that Sunday. Do we really need Giants-Dodgers the first week of the year? No offense to the Giants, they're not going to be relevant. The Astros don't go to LA till September. In fact, the Dodgers go to Houston first in July. So now maybe you get the bad blood out in Houston, which albeit, yes, no fans anyway. But I would have liked if the MLB people kind of let the Dodgers host the Astros first for those two games rather than the other way around. But that's a small beef on my part. I'll let that live, and I'm sure it'll be touched on as we get closer to that matchup. But you could look at your ESPN schedule and find the same teams pretty much on it over 2 months. But before we get into our minor league roundtable, I want to remind you again, you can go to our website, pinstripeprospects.com. We provide exclusive minor league content to paid subscribers with our new Dugout membership program. You'll get scouting reports, player interviews, coaches' insight articles that are up there from Yankees draft picks and non-drafted free agents, features, and much more addition to our free Major League coverage. Sign up for our Dugout membership program for either $5.50 a month or $40 per year. So we thank you for those who have already subscribed, and for those who haven't, I guarantee you won't regret signing up. A lot of great stuff on the website that's waiting for you once you sign up. So sign up for a Dugout membership today. So last week,
Ricky,
go ahead.
Before we get to the next thing, I just want to throw something out there to everyone, and I'll start with you. What do you make of Hal Steinbrenner's comments about the possibility of possibly fielding 10,000 fans a game? Would you, if that happens, which I don't think it's going to happen, but if that happens, would you consider being one of those 10,000?
Well, I'll throw a two-part answer. One, I didn't like it. I think baseball should have had a set thing. I get it's kind of everything controlled by the states, it seems, and that's a whole different other issue. It should be most to all have fans or nobody have fans. We shouldn't have it where I have to now I have to go one place with fans and then back to somewhere with no fans. I think that's where baseball, has to put its collective heads together and say, look, the Giants don't have fans. The A's don't have fans. I know the Dodgers, I think, refunded some of the money, and a lot of teams doing it now too, but I don't know if the Dodgers will have fans. You can't have, I think, part of the country have fans and part of the country not, because with all this regional traveling, I don't think that's fair. I've thought about it. I don't think I would be this year. To me, I feel like the first time I step back in a sporting event, I'm going to be very anxious. I think that's normal for anybody. I don't know if I could see myself going to a sporting event this year, and I think even next year, I would be very tentative. I'd probably if masks aren't being worn, that I probably would still bring a mask, just to be honest, because it's going to be different. And I think the way the ballparks have to try to figure out social distancing, which is not easy at all. It's not easy for businesses in general. So, to be honest, Rob, I don't know if I would go to a game this year if it was offered. And quite frankly, I would say a little bit angry when I heard Hal say that the other day.
Yeah, I'm with you, especially with your first point as far as uniformity across the league. You have to have the same set of rules for every team. So the state-to-state thing is kind of sketchy. And then it opens up a whole new can of worms, which is if you live in a place where, like you said, there's no fans, but it's kind of because it's kind of a hot zone, and then you travel to a place like New York or somewhere else where they're allowing fans, then it just creates a whole new can of worms. So yeah, I'm with you. I think just get it out of the way now. Don't get anyone's hopes up. Don't get anybody's hopes up. Just no fans this year.
I don't just don't get anybody else can chime in this too. I just don't get why that wasn't decided. I mean, if you want to go the cardboard cutout route, by all means, do that. But I don't get why some of these places haven't just flat out come out and said right now, no fans in general. Like, I don't get why some of these hotspot places like the Marlins or the Rays or the Diamondbacks or any of these Texas teams haven't just come out and say, look, we're not having fans this year. Like, I quite frankly, I'm puzzled by it. But I guess baseball, I guess maybe views it as if somebody has fans, it's more money that we can distribute with revenue.
I think at this point, too, it is state-by-state basis. You look at Florida where Governor Ron DeSantis is, he's welcomed sports back. At this point, I believe he's kind of taken the stance of let's not put fans in the stadiums at this point. But you look at the NBA, who Orlando is going to be their bubble, so to speak, is where they're all going to be coming. And I think they reported today, actually. So I believe they're now here in Florida for their games. So I think it's a state-by-state case and basis. You look at the NFL, that's looking at 25% capacity in stadiums. That would be about every other 6 seats, I believe, for the Jacksonville Jaguars stadium. Things like that, just to kind of implement different things. And I know the NFL has kind of left it up to the teams, I believe, at this point. So I don't know if MLB is taking that same stance. I agree that it should be league-wide. Let's make a rule and let's run with it. But in the same token, I think fans would be excited to get back into a stadium if they could.
Because you'll get those people that call into your talk shows and be like, oh, I'm going to go and I'm going to support my team, and that's great. You also have to take into account, and I'll bring in James for this one, 20 to 30% Yankee Stadium is a lot different than 20 to 30% at some other ballparks. So if, let's say, each team is allowed 20%, the Yankees can bring in more people at 20% than throw any small market team at 20%. So it's still, even if you allowed fans, you're still going to have more fans in one ballpark than you are another ballpark by those standards. So that's also a thing that's just not, I guess we're in the world that, life's not fair, but that's another dynamic too.
No, I do agree. But I'm going to agree with what was said before, that it's going to have to be a state-by-state basis with this case. I think at this point, New York has been pretty, I don't want to say good, but been better than some of these states where these outbreaks are having. Mm-hmm. So if it at all possible, if the Yankees can fill 20% of their stadium and keep everyone at a safe distance, and I don't mind it. I'm not going to go out and say I hate that. It will definitely bring a little more. I don't know if it's so much for money. It will definitely bring a little more atmosphere and excitement to the game. And I get safety is everyone's first priority here. But if it's at all possible to make it a safe environment, I don't see why not at least give it a try. I get how that sounds, but if it's safe, if they're saying it's safe, if New York State approves it, then I don't see why they shouldn't be allowed to do it.
Matt or Rob Pimster, any of you guys got thoughts on this?
When it comes down to it with fans and everything, I think it's kind of jumping the gun with what everything's going on with the country. We're not even done with the first wave, and everything's getting worse, especially in the South. And who's to say that's not going to happen again here once everything's fully opened up? I think it's just too early to say any which way or the other. But in my opinion, I think they should just plan with no fans.
Matt, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm definitely in agreement here. I think I had a kind of twofold issue with the statement. The first was the timeliness. So just as Rob said, I think it's the wrong time to be making any kind of prognostications like this. We are not in a position where we know how this is going to play out. The whole season could end up being a total disaster. There could be massive outbreaks, and they could have to cancel the whole thing before there's even the option to bring fans in. So I just don't think it's the right time to be opening up that can of worms at the moment. And then the second thing, as other folks have mentioned, you can't have a situation where some teams will be playing in front of empty ballparks and other teams will have fans in attendance. That's just not fair. I don't, even as a Yankee fan, if the Yankees were in the advantageous position there, you would have to say objectively that wouldn't be fair. So I agree with all the rest of what's been said. It's not realistic at this point. It shouldn't be on anybody's mind, and we should be focused on getting the season started and playing these games safely without fans in attendance.
Definitely a topic that I'm sure will be revisited if that decision ends up being made to have fans at Yankee Stadium. But it definitely, I think, brings up a lot of thoughts. And again, it's your individual decision, what you want to do out there if you're listening. But it's one of those things that I think is going to be debated. And I think if you don't feel comfortable going to a game, you have every right to not feel comfortable. It's all everybody's preferences. So let's get into our minor league discussion. I know we got into a little bit last week when we were right off the idea of the season being canceled. And we kind of want to do a little bit of a segment where we just look back at the minor leagues in general and give our thoughts of being a fan of the minor leagues, how we got into minor league baseball, and some of our fan and beat writer moments. Rob Ternovo, I'll start with you just because you're at MiLB.com. Just since you weren't here last week, give me your quick thoughts on the cancellation of the year and what did that mean to you when that news came down?
Honestly, it was devastating. It was just really hard. I think that minor league baseball is such a big part of small towns in this country, and I think it is so important in terms of keeping the game popular in cities where otherwise they really wouldn't have any interest in baseball. And a lot of those guys whose livelihood depends on playing minor league baseball, who knows what's going to happen to them now? And it was just devastating. And I hope that this is just a blip in the road, and we'll be back to operating somewhat normal next year. But it was kind of crushing to get that official announcement.
So I want to look at, since we talked about last week, let's start here with this discussion. Alexis, I'll go to you first. How did you first get into minor league baseball? Like, what piqued your interest in the minor leagues?
Yeah, so some know that I graduated with my master's degree in 2017 from the University of Florida. And one of the classes I took, we were asked to shadow someone in our field, a field of interest, shadow them for a day and write an 8-page paper. So I reached out to a bunch of different baseball organizations, one being at the time, Tampa Yankees, and their community relations director, Jessica Ventura, and just asked if I could shadow her for a day. She said yes. From there, I shadowed, I sent her my paper after, and I remained in contact with her. I continued to go to some Tampa Yankees games. At the time, I lived in Gainesville, but I would go to Tampa, go to some games, and just stayed in contact with her through that next year. And then in 2018 is when I got the opportunity to intern with the Tarpons. And from there, interned for a full season with them, and then got a full-time position with the Fort Myers Miracle, now Fort Myers Mighty Muscles, and worked for them for a year.
Rob, since you are the founder of our site, I think a lot of fans who haven't heard it before, if they haven't heard it yet on the show, would love to know how you got into minor league baseball.
I mean, for me, it really goes back, I started in minor league baseball as a fan, and my earliest, minor league, I got introduced to minor league baseball in 1999 when the Staten Island Yankees came to Staten Island, and I over the years I went from a fan that attended 1 or 2 games to a fan that attended a lot of games to a season ticket holder when they opened up the stadium in St. George. And through that, I became friends with a lot of these players over the years. And it was 2002 when I was experimenting with website design, playing around with GeoCities websites, if you're old enough to remember that, and writing a lot. And I was friends with 2 specific players, Matt Brummett, who was a closer on the team, and Ryan Beacondoa, who was one of the better starters I've seen at that level. And I always hung out by the bullpen talking with the pitchers. I always gravitated towards pitchers, and because I just love the aspect that pitchers control the game. But after I'm talking with them, and you gotta remember, there was no blogs, there was no minorleaguebaseball.com like we know it today. There was the coverage of minor league baseball back then was few and far between. And the guys, it was towards the end of the 2002 season, they asked me if there was a way I could help keep their families updated on what they were doing and how they were doing. So that eventually led to the creation of my first website, which was called Baby Bombers, which was all covering the Santa Ana Yankees. And I did that until 2009. I closed that down and worked for Gotham Baseball and Baseball Digest for a couple of years until I created Pinstripe Prospects in 2014. And that's how I got here. My career covering minor leagues started. 2003 is what I call my first official year. That's when I first officially started the website Baby Bombers, and it's kind of grown from there. It was something that I was just doing for fun and everything, to something that I wanted to do for a career, but tides have changed thanks to pandemic and everything else going on. So we'll see how it comes to the future.
Matt, what about you?
Yeah, so I'm a native of Long Island, and my mom's family is all from Brooklyn, and Yankees fandom was passed down to me through my mom's family for a few generations before me. But when I was fairly young, my family relocated to a minor league town, and that town is the beautiful city of Portland, Maine. So well behind enemy lines in Sox Nation territory. But the Portland Sea Dogs, the Red Sox AA affiliate, are a staple of summer life in Portland, Maine. And as a big baseball fan, to be honest, I didn't care that they were a Sox affiliate. I loved being able to walk out my front door, walk 10 minutes down the road, pay $8, and get a great seat for a professional baseball game. So I would say over the course of my late elementary school, middle school, and high school years, I attended hundreds of Sea Dogs games, first as just a big fan, and then later on in high school as a concessions worker. The games are played at Hadlock Field in Portland, which is a little gem of an urban ballpark, kind of tucked into a quiet wooded corner of the city. And it is just a marvelous place to watch a baseball game. There's a model scale replica of the Green Monster in left field called the Maine Monster. And the games are peppered with fun traditions, fun promotions. One of the best mascots in minor league baseball, Slugger the Sea Dog. I got the chance to see Yankees prospects come through there when they were playing with Trenton. So guys from Aaron Judge to Gary Sanchez to Luis Severino. Attending Sea Dogs games and getting that experience was a really formative part of my baseball fandom, especially during my teenage years.
For me, minor league baseball was something that I speak to where I'm right where Rob Pimster's from Staten Island. I was a season ticket holder for the Staten Island Yankees, went to a lot of games, and I enjoyed going to the game, keeping score, etc., just as going to watch baseball. And I got into minor league baseball mainly when I was writing at Yank Schoolyard, which those who don't know is the Yankees site for Fansided, and my editor at the time, Billy Brose, was putting together different teams of writers and nominated me for minor leagues. And I'm like, at that time, I'm like, okay, like, why do I worry about prospects at the time? And then how am I going to make myself into like this big name prospects? With a buddy of mine, Wayne Cavati, who does great work at Talking Chop, talking about the Braves and does some excellent prospect stuff for them. So we joined together, formed some reports, and I got more interested into it. And that led me to having a passion for minor league baseball and writing about the Sound Yankees for them, and coming here at Pinstripe Prospects and doing it. And then even at District on Deck with the Nationals fan site, talking with their broadcasters, interviews with their players over the phone, and just learning more about the prospect stories. Because I think one of the things people miss about minor league coverage, and I'll let Rob Tarnoa chime on this because he writes about these guys from MiLB.com. He talks to almost every player imaginable. It's the stories of the players sometimes that don't make it to the big leagues that you enjoy the most, because they're playing just for the passion of the game, and you've grown attached to when those guys do make it. If they do make it to the majors, you've now grown like, hey, I remember that guy when he was playing in that spot. So, Rob, I'll throw it to you just about how you grew into liking the minor leagues and just what you're seeing working at MiLB.com and how that's seeing the minor leagues grow from something that maybe people aren't that interested in now, where everybody's interested in practically.
I'm going to have to piggyback on the point you already made, which is it's just so cool to be able to to use the cliche, talk to the stars before they're stars. You just get to talk to these guys that they're just hungry and they're fighting for their chance, and they still want to talk to you. They still like the press, they still like the coverage, and you're not the enemy. Like, I feel like sometimes at the major league level, these guys they don't want to talk to the media at all. But on the minor league level, they're hungry, they're anxious, and they want to be out there and they want to perform and they want to get the publicity. So it's just really cool to have that opportunity. And just use a somewhat recent example of a guy we opened the podcast with, Clark Schmidt. I spoke to him a few times last year, and he was awesome. He was just so relaxed and just talking about how he just has, when he goes out there, he has fun, and he's always up to the challenge. I remember when he had a big relief outing for Trenton in their playoff run. I was just talking to him about the moment and the pressure and everything, and he was like, every time I take that mound, I know I belong there. So I'm just going out there to compete and get my innings in and shut the other team down. And no matter where he goes, whatever mound he's on, that's what he does. And we just saw it the other day on the Yankee Stadium mound, so that was awesome to see. I was watching that game, that intra-squad game, and I could hear him telling me that about wherever he is, he's just there to shut the opposition down, and there he was doing it. So it's just a really cool, unique experience. And like I said earlier, I hope it continues. I hope we get back to minor league baseball next year.
So let's take a look at it from a fan perspective, because I'm sure all of us have been to minor league games as fans. I'll let anybody else start this out. What is your favorite moment of being at a game as a fan? Let's go Alexis first.
Oh man, so my favorite moment being a fan. So I grew up in I live in Fort Pierce, Florida. So I grew up about 10 minutes from where the St. Lucie Mets play. So I think my favorite moment as a fan was probably, honestly, as a kid, going to the St. Lucie Mets camp and then getting to go on the field with the players for the game and really getting to know some of those guys through camp. That was probably what honestly sparked my interest in minor league baseball. I grew up playing baseball, softball, so to get to go on was a really cool moment for me.
Matt, what about you?
So I went to college in Providence, Rhode Island, and while I was there, I attended a number of Pawtucket Red Sox games right up the road. You're probably sensing a trend here that I have attended a lot of Red Sox affiliate minor league games in my day. But specifically, I would choose the games where Scranton was in town. And this is, we're talking 2016, 2017, so just a few years back. And in one of those games where the Rail Riders were visiting Pawtucket, I actually got to see Justice Sheffield's first AAA start. And Justice Sheffield was one of those prospects that I kind of fell in love with from a fan standpoint because he was such a great pitcher when he was coming up through the system, but also because he just had such an infectious personality and he was active on Twitter and, he just seemed like the kind of player that I really wanted to root for. So I saw that when he got promoted to AAA, his start was lined up for the series when the Rail Riders were coming to Pawtucket, instantly snapped up tickets, hoped I was getting tickets for the game that he was going to pitch, kind of like counted out the days from his last start to make sure it fitted. And indeed it did. So I got to see his start and, I got seats like kind of right up next to the field and got to watch his whole warm up, got there about an hour and a half before the game started and could just see his enthusiasm. You could see he was kind of like joking, trying to stay lighthearted, keep the anxiety down. And he proceeded to throw a pretty good game that day. A short start, but a good start. So again, just like an awesome experience of being able to, see a player, really rising up through the ranks and getting closer to his dream of making the big leagues.
Rob Pimster, what about you?
I started so young in the media side of things that I can't really remember much, fan-wise. The only thing that could come to mind is back in '99 when Staten Island first came and like my first game there. I was cheering very heavily, just because it's my first game. I was a kid. I was like barely, maybe 9, 10 years old. I don't even remember how old I was in '99. But yeah, I mean, what it comes down to is, I was cheering very heavily. There was a bunch of drunks sitting next to me, and one of the drunks was about to throw up, and I turned to him and said, "You hurl better than the pitcher," and referring to the opponent's pitcher. So that's pretty much what my fan experience was.
Yeah, I think for me, it's the Brooklyn Staten Island rivalry. It's been cool to cover it from a media perspective, but as a fan, it was just great to have like your own little mini rivalry to like go to. And like you see this in like the small minor league towns where like that's the one thing they don't have: Yankees, Red Sox. They don't have Giants, Dodgers, or Cardinals, Cubs. They have their like own little mini minor league rivalry that's like a small taste of that. And that's something that if minor league baseball goes through with eliminating a lot of these teams, a lot of places are going to miss that. And I remember when there was the Battle of the Boroughs, and these awesome T-shirts where I had like it was like a Brooklyn borough picture on one side and a Staten Island borough picture on the other side, like the map. Like that was like one of my favorite shirts to have. So
those shirts.
When that rivalry was like peak, because I don't think it's at its peak now that it once was, not even close. So I think for me, those are the games those are the games I felt like as a person living in this borough and as a season ticket holder, like I had to be at those games just because the atmosphere, even right now, is different there. Maybe it's because a certain amount of the other team's fans are in the park, but it's different now than it was in like 10, 15 years ago, and not for the good reasons.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with you.
Terranova, let me get to you because I know you. Now, let's take a look at your fan experience. What do you remember being a fan just going to games?
So my favorite fan moment at a minor league ballpark was in Nashville. I don't know if it was last summer or 2 summers ago, but I got to see Jesus Luzardo start, and he was the most dominating person I've ever seen at a baseball game ever. And then obviously now he's Jesus Luzardo. So that was really cool to kind of get a first glimpse at that and just be amazed at watching him work on a minor league mound. But probably most frequently, it's just enjoying a summer night, taking the ferry over to Staten Island, having a few drinks, catching up with some friends, and watching the Staten Island Yankees while you take in what I would argue is the best view in sports. And Rob's usually there too, so catching up with Rob is always a good time. And that's honestly definitely my favorite fan moments as far as minor league baseball goes.
So we've looked at it from a fan perspective. Now let's take a look at it from covering teams and looking at it, because I think a lot of people we have on this show now are in the media side and covering games as beat writers, and now looking at the game from a different lens than as you were as a kid or whenever before you were here watching a game. I know I have, and I'll speak to my experience in a little bit. Let's start with Matt. Do you have anything on this one?
Yeah, don't have too much since I haven't done too much minor league coverage for the site yet. Mostly focused on the major league side of things.
Mm-hmm.
I will say that I've had a great time doing the daily prospect reports a couple of times, and I did a season summary for the Gulf Coast League Yankees last year, which was a lot of fun to do. But from what you guys have said and listening to you all talk, it sounds like it's an awesome thing to do. So I'd love to get into it more.
Pimpster, I know you have files galore. Give me one that you like.
Oh man, I mean, there's a lot. I can't pick just one. There's so many, things from my time covering from minors, because I've been doing this so long. But whether it was seeing. When the Santa Yankees used to be on Yes Network, seeing David Cohn and Joe Girardi come down and sign autographs in the middle of a rain delay, mm-hmm. or seeing how they interacted with fans and everything, or sharing the booth with the great late Warner Fussell. For those of you who don't know, if you remember This Week in Baseball, Warner Fussell was the lead producer on that, and he was the voice of it after Mel Allen passed. And he is just a legend in baseball, and I learned so much about the game from Warner. He was the Brooklyn Cyclones announcer, but he taught me so much about covering the game and how to do it the right way and what to do. I am forever grateful for what he taught me, and I try to teach that to everyone else that I work with. But meeting him was a huge impact on my life. Some of the other great guys I've met, George Napolitano, who's a photographer for the Brooklyn Cyclones. If you're a wrestling fan, you should know his name because he is a Hall of Fame professional wrestling photographer, and he's such a great guy. I love talking with him about baseball. I love talking with him about wrestling during the games. But then there's the times it was just like bullshitting in the middle of the game with El Duque and joking around with him, or cracking jokes with Miguel Cairo, or talking with Nick Swisher, which is every bit what you expect talking with Nick Swisher is about. But my favorite part covering games is talking with scouts and learning from the scouts of the game, because they are the true lifeblood of baseball. And if whoever's sat in the booth with me in Staten Island knows just how much I love that experience with talking with scouts, because wherever I'm sitting in Staten Island usually becomes the central hub for where all the scouts go before the game, because we're all talking and we're all sharing information and everything. And that's something I really love about minor league baseball. Is just there's a camaraderie there between the scouts, the media, and stuff like that. As long as you treat everyone with the right respect, and you treat everyone like you want to be treated, there is camaraderie there, and I love it.
Terranova, what about you?
I have nothing to add to that, actually. I think Rob just nailed it. Definitely the two best things are the camaraderie, not only what you build in the press box, but the relationships you build with staff, coaches, players, everyone. Even the food people in the press box, you start to become friendly with them too. So the camaraderie is definitely awesome, and just picking the brains of scouts, getting to know them, who they've seen, who they like. It definitely brings the fandom just a few notches up, and it's such an awesome experience.
Alexis?
Yeah, so I haven't covered it from the perspective of a writer quite yet, but I've obviously been there on the team side of it. I guess echoing what everybody else said, it's the camaraderie, it's getting to know the players, and then getting to follow them. Still to the day, I might cover the Yankees and the Mets, but the Twins will always have a piece of my heart too. In that, now I know a lot of these young prospects, and the Twins this year have 9 of the prospects that were on the Fort Myers Miracle Advanced A roster last year alone in their player pool this year. So it's going to be exciting to be able to watch them come up. One of my favorite memories, though, I have to say, was last year when we clinched the Florida State League South Division first half title. That was a lot of fun to be a part of in Tampa. And it was a little bittersweet and awkward too, all at the same time, because I was not even 2-3 months removed from working with the Tampa Tarpons, and now all of a sudden I'm celebrating on their field with another team winning a championship on the field that used to be a home field for me. So in the token, it was like, yes, we won, but at the same time, I'm like, this is really awkward to celebrate on this field. So that was a really cool memory, and one that I'll always have, and getting to go back to Tampa and see all my old staff and friends that I had made. So just, getting to know the players, getting to watch their journeys. You look at Randy Dobnak last year, working his way all the way up from single A to the Minnesota Twins, became a big part of their playoff run last year. Just a really cool, minor league baseball. It's a family, and you learn that really quickly. I think baseball as a whole is a family. I'd love to see, even as Aaron Boone has said, all these coaches, while things are staying competitive at the major league level right now, all the coaches are checking in on each other. Everybody wants to make sure that everybody's okay. What are you doing? What's working for you? How can we help each other out? Baseball is a family, and that's the same for minor league baseball as well.
Yeah, for me, it's really about One of them, I think, would be covering the Stallion Yankees when they made it to the New York Penn League Championship Series a few years ago, losing to West Virginia. I think being as a writer, just getting a chance to cover a championship series, you don't get that often. So that was, I think, a cool experience. To me, it's just talking to the players. I think what we do here, one of the perks you get here at writing at Pinstripe Prospects is we're, in most cases, the first media outlet these players talk to with the draft. I know it was different this year, but sometimes, like when we interview a player at the draft, we will get to interview them when they come to Staten Island to play. And the fact they remember talking to us means a lot. Like I just did the series with the Yankee late round picks of the past, and I talked with Matt Witherspoon, who remembered me from 6 years ago, which I did not expect. A player remember me who's now in the majors from talking to me from 6-7 years ago. So to me, when I heard that he remembered who I was, that was something special to me. But also, I think it's just getting to talk to some of the top players. What always stands out to me is when I got to talk to James Caprillion, just because the professional manner he had. It sucks that he's battled injuries throughout the last few years of his career. Very polished player, somebody who knew how to handle the media from his time at UCLA. So I thought that was pretty cool. And I think also my experience talking to Josh Bro, which there's a memorable quote in the article from that one. I guess I'll say because in the article itself. I asked him why he became a catcher, and he said he was a shortstop, but he got fat. So that's my all-time favorite quote from a player. But it was cool getting to talk to Josh Bro and then having the players and the coach around him saying, "You're going to talk to him. He hasn't played a game yet." So, and he did get played next day against Noah Syndergaard in his professional debut. But just to get to talk to these guys, and even last year getting to talk with rehabbers like Mike Ford and Eric Swanson for the first time, just getting a taste of the experience of working covering a professional baseball team. And yes, the minor leagues are a professional baseball team, especially in a lot of these small markets. So I've enjoyed that, and hopefully I'll be back soon or in some ballpark somewhere, because who knows what's going to happen with Staten Island next year. But we'll be here covering it all, and I know I can speak from all of us who have been at Pinstripe Prospects or covering it now, being in the sites. It's a pleasure to bring you all of you minor league coverage, and we hope next year we'll get to bring it to you. But as we said last week, we're not going anywhere. We're still gonna have great articles up about the season, and we'll try to maybe do some cool features throughout the year. Maybe looking back at some of our cool moments. Maybe some of our writers will do that. But we'll definitely, just because, like we said last week, the minor league season stops doesn't mean we stop. We still keep going, and we'll be here for you every step of the way. But I thought this was a cool segment to do. It was one of the ideas I had, and I'm glad that we got to share some of those moments with you. And we hope that you can just go to our Twitter at Pinstripe Pros and anytime share your favorite moment with us. So we're happy. We'll retweet it out, and we're glad if you share your moment with us. We definitely would appreciate it. So let's get into our final thoughts for those who aren't familiar with the show and with us. But this is the part of the show where we just talk about whatever we want, whatever's on our mind with sports. Some of us talk about other sports, or anything in general is open for the forum. So let us start with Alexis. What do you got this week?
Yeah, I think my final thought, we saw the 2020 schedule released this week, yesterday. But I think also with that, today was announced that the Yankees and Mets will play in what will probably be the most powerful game next year. The Mets and Yankees will be playing at Citi Field on 9/11, which will be the 20th anniversary of 9/11 occurring. Even Aaron Boone said it in his press conference interview today, that he can't imagine how much of an impactful game it's going to be. He stated, to quote him, "I can't imagine how emotional and how powerful an event it could be." I think that sums it up. The Yankees and Mets, and hopefully by 2021 we have fans in the stadium, because I think that's going to be a day that America's going to remember for a very long time. It's going to be powerful.
Yeah, props to baseball for getting that right, and it's only fitting it's at Citi Field. We all remember, or at least we see the highlights of the Mike Piazza home run, the first game in New York after 9/11. So to have the Yankees Mets at Citi Field, it's only fitting. So we talk about how sometimes baseball gets the schedule wrong. This time they definitely hit the nail on the head. So great job by MLB there. Terranova, since this is your first time, I want you to give your final thought. Whatever you want, you have the floor.
I actually have two final thoughts, but one is really quick, so I'll get that one out of the way right now.
Yeah, shoot.
Don't sleep on the Blue Jays. I've got them finishing third in the division and being players right up to the end and really making a run for that second wild card spot. So a lot of young talent, a lot of up-and-coming talent that still people aren't talking about. So I've got the Blue Jays finishing third in the division right behind the Rays. I think that's going to be a tight race.
I can't wait for Nate Pearson. I know he'll have to wait probably 7 days because of that stupid service time rule, but I want to see Nate Pearson pitch.
He's electric. He's definitely a sight to see. So it will be. I think it'll be fun to watch. And Ricky, I know you said this already. I think they're going to be playing spoilers down the road there. But okay, so that was my first thought. My second thought is anyone happier right now? I mean, just jumping for joy more than the Astros. Did they get off the hook or what? All their draft penalties didn't really mean anything. 60-game season, no fans. They're just completely off the hook.
I mean, in a way, both the Astros and the Red Sox. There's nothing stopping AJ Hinch or Jeff Luna or Alex Cora from working in baseball after basically serving a 60-game suspension. In a way. I mean, right. I don't know if it'll happen, but it's possible.
That's right.
Yeah, that's something I'm sure that'll get revisited when baseball actually starts. But I mean, through everything that's gone on, you kind of forget the Astros in a way. We don't, but
right.
a lot of people do.
And LA definitely won't either.
LA definitely won't. That's why I wanted it at Dodger Stadium to start the year, not Minute Maid Park. But can't get that one right. But like you said, you make mistakes with schedules. I just found that odd that they picked the Dodgers and Giants. I don't get it. But Matt, what do you got?
So there is live baseball with fans in attendance happening right now in the United States of America, and boy am I lucky because it's taking place 15 minutes from me. So I currently reside in the tiny seaside town of Nahant, Massachusetts, right next door to the larger city of Lynn, Massachusetts, which itself plays host to the North Shore Navigators of the very small 6-team Futures Collegiate Baseball League, Summer Collegiate League. While its better known and larger cousins, the Cape Cod League and the New England Collegiate Baseball League, canceled their seasons, the Futures League decided to go on with things. So they kicked off their season last week. The Navigators had their home opener tonight. Masks are required for fans. Capacity is only 25% of ballparks. But since the teams are located only in Massachusetts, New Hampshire, and Connecticut, the league figured that it was all right to begin play and invite a limited number of fans back. I will probably go to one of these games. The Navigators have another home game coming up tomorrow and then another on Friday. I'm going to check it out. I'll see how it goes. Definitely, safely distanced with my mask on, but I could not be more excited to watch some live baseball. It's going to be a real privilege. Excited to see some of those college players get to showcase their stuff this summer.
And Matt, I just to chime in here, sorry guys, but I love that league. That's a great league. There's a lot of good talent in that league. I used to do play-by-play for the Brockton Rocks, who play in that league. And the ballparks are all really nice. They're small, they're intimate, not a lot of fans, but it's a good product. So definitely enjoy.
That's awesome, Rob. Yeah, absolutely. I've had great experiences with it. Brockton's always fun when the Rocks come to town, so should be a great season.
James, what do you got?
I guess I'll go with, I got to keep it consistent. So I'm going to go with the golf, obviously. I think I have to. I don't know if anyone here pays attention to golf, anyone who listens pays attention to golf. But Bryson DeChambeau, I don't know if anyone's seen him on Twitter. He's hitting the ball 350 yards on average, which is completely unprecedented. And he finally won his first tournament, the Rocket Mortgage Classic, just this past week. And now he's the favorite for all 3 major championships coming up. So definitely been absolutely ridiculous to watch DeChambeau hit a golf ball. It's something that I don't think anyone ever expected to see. It looks like the Incredible Hulk swinging a golf club. Yeah, man. I mean, it's crazy. Thank God golf is back. Thank God. Well, golf was the first one back because it's been incredibly entertaining to watch. But yeah, I guess I have to keep consistent, right, Ricky, with the golf final thoughts.
We're gonna have to queue up like a swing kind of clip before James gives his final thought.
Yeah,
we'll have to get on that somehow.
It has to be. It's back right now, other than like scrimmages.
I'll give a couple. One, props to Yes. I know a lot of teams don't have what Yes has to be able to give the fans broadcasts of practices and intra-squad games. You don't get that a lot of places, if anywhere at all. So a lot of credit to the Yes team, not only for the coverage they've done during the pandemic, which I found really cool. The Yes We're Here's, the stories, if you caught Sunday with Michael Kay and Jack Curry, just talking about stories in general from their covering it as a writer and as a broadcaster. I found those really cool. Props to them for that. I think the other one for me, I'll give you. If you're not following Sean Doolittle, follow him. Every time I learn something new from him all the time, and I'm trying to find the exact quote and I can't find it. I don't. I know a lot of the writers had it. How he speaks very well, and you can understand about how he feels like he's not opting out now, but he can, if he starts to feel it mentally, he might. And he talks about like sports should be a reward for flattening the curve, and we're seeing all these places. Like I'm envious of all these other countries in the world that can go off with sports without a hitch. I feel like we just saw the Premier League in their latest round of testing, and the English League in soccer, no positive tests. Everything going very well for these leagues in other countries because they're following the rules. So to me, I kind of see where Dulo's coming from. Sports should be a reward for following the rules. It shouldn't just be we got to have sports back because it helps our economy. Like, no, we got to all stick together and wear masks and follow the rules so we can get sports back and we can at least have something else to talk about. Like, I think that's really important. So props to Sean Doolittle there. From a non-baseball perspective, I'll give a shameless plug to my show, Kicking with Keo on Full Press Radio. One of the things I'm interested from a sports perspective to follow this week, Alexis talked about the NBA reporting to the bubble in Florida this week. Wednesday night on ESPN, MLS bubble starts. The men's professional soccer league. I know the NWSL started the women's soccer league. I'll be talking with Tom Bogert on my show, who covers MLS soccer for a bunch of places. And you've seen one team, FC Dallas, said to already go out because they've had 10 positive cases with players and I think a staff member or something like that. I know one match got postponed because 5 Nashville players got tested positive for COVID-19. So just what's going on in that bubble is, I think, is going to determine, like, that's the first litmus test for what might go on in the NBA bubble, what might go on in the NHL hub in early August when that gets started. What might happen with football, even though there's no hub there. We talked about that a little bit earlier. So I'm not a huge soccer fan. I'll watch it, though, because at least it's something. And I think just to see, okay, how is the bubble experiment really going to work? I'm really fascinated by that. So that'll be on my show this week over on Full Press Radio. Catch that interview there. I'm interested in learning a lot from Tom about soccer and what's going on because, this is where it gets real. We're at that moment where sports are about to happen. And we're about to see can these leagues really pull this off? And I know some have doubts. I have my doubts, especially some with baseball. We talked about it with the testing and everything like that. Again, I hope I'm wrong. And I'm sure a lot of people hope they're wrong. But we're far from being it guaranteed that you're going to see a live sport or finish a season in a major sport this year. Just the way it is.
I'll chime in there a minute too, Ricky. You talk about how MLS has a bubble, NBA has a bubble. I think it's going to be really interesting to see with MLB and NFL both still planning travel, having teams travel. There is no bubble for those two sports. I think it's going to be real interesting to see, does the bubble work? Does traveling pan out? You have 4 sports all doing something completely different. I think it's going to be real interesting to see how this season plays out in all sports.
Definitely. I think football is one of those. Football I kind of view it, especially college football. That's one of the things I got really ticked off at college football, where if you can't have students on campus, how can you responsibly have student athletes on campus? They're students first. How can we have football when students are taking online classes? It blows my mind. But I guess that's where, again, we talk about it. Economy kind of plays large sometimes. I'm interested to see what college football does because those athletes that play aren't getting paid, and they're taking a big risk being on the field if they do play this fall. I hope maybe we'll see what the Ivy League decides if they go spring football. But that's going to be something to watch. And I'm going to keep an eye on what those college commissioners, because there's no commissioner in NCAA, what those college presidents decide to do. There's a big microscope on them, and they have to make the right decision. And hopefully it pays off. So I want to thank everybody for tuning in this week. We had a lot of different topics on the table. I think we all got a lot out of this conversation, both on the Yankees summer camp updates. We'll continue to bring you those. I know Alexis and Michael Marino are doing a fantastic job on social media about the intra squads, getting great video, getting great pictures up on our Twitter page, Instagram, Facebook. They're doing fantastic work. Be sure to keep an eye on that. You can follow us on Twitter at Pinstripe Pros, like us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, subscribe to the podcast on iTunes. Be sure to give us a rating. We hope it's 5 stars. Please share your feedback. We want to hear from you. And please also subscribe wherever else you get your podcasts. We are really thankful for that. And please sign up for our Dugout membership program. It helps us as a site, and I think you'll greatly benefit from the coverage that you get that you don't get anywhere else about the Yankees minor league system. So thanks again to everybody who's been on the panel. Thanks to Rob Terranova for coming back and giving us his thoughts. I was glad to have Rob back on this week. Thanks to James and Rob, who are here every week, and Alexis, who's been on the past few weeks, Matt, who we've heard a couple weeks ago, but he was back this week. Everybody did a fantastic job. We hope you're all staying safe. Please stay safe. Please wear a mask. Stay responsible. And we'll see you back here next week